Welcome to today's episode of The Truth Beyond the Curtain at Tony's podcast. I'm your host, and today we're going to dive into one of the oldest and darkest manipulations in human history: how leaders corrupt the minds of good men and send them to war, often to die while they themselves remain unscathed. From ancient times to modern-day conflicts, this pattern of manipulation has played out again and again, with tragic consequences. But why does this happen? How do leaders who are supposed to serve their people convince them to lay down their life for causes that often serve only the interest of the powerful? And how can we recognize and resist this brainwashing in today's world? Let's break it down. Throughout history, we've seen powerful figures manipulate the mass to do their bidding, often using war as a tool for personal gain or political power. Whether it's monarchs, dictators, or even democratically elected officials, these leaders know one crucial thing: war are never fought by the elite. War are fought by the common man, the farmer, the factory worker, the young soldier just out of high school, and most of these men are good-hearted, law-abiding citizens who would rather live peacefully with their families than go to war. So how do leaders convince these good men to fight? The answer lies in psychological manipulation. Leaders often corrupt the very values that make people decent. Values like patriotism, loyalty, and honor, and use them against their own citizens. Take a look at history. During World War I, young men were sent into trenches, told they were fighting for freedom and justice, yet much of the war was about imperial rivalries and economic interests, not moral righteousness. The soldiers who died in the mud were not the ones who benefited from victory. It was their leaders who gained more power, resources, and territory. The tactics used to brainwash good men are subtle but effective. Let's discuss three key strategies. One of the most powerful tools of manipulation is the appeal of nationalism. Leaders tell their citizens that their country is under threat, that the enemy is dangerous, and that fighting is the only way to protect their homeland. They wrap this message in symbols like the flag, the anthem, and historical pride. Suddenly, war becomes not about serving the leader's agenda, but about defending your family, your freedom, your identity. In reality, war are rarely about national survival. They're about control, resources, or political influence. Leaders know this, but they need to convince the masses that it's a fight worth dying for. The second strategy is demonizing the enemy. Leaders need to make the opposing side seem less than human, evil, and unworthy of compassion. This technique dates back to the ancient time. Roman leaders labeled their enemies barbarians. During World War II, propaganda painted the enemy as monstrous. Leaders want to create an emotional distance between their soldier and the enemy, so it becomes easier to justify killing them. Once soldiers see the enemy as inhuman, they can be more easily manipulated to fight, to hate, and ultimately to die for their cause. Finally, fear and honor play massive roles in brainwashing good men to go to war. Leaders invoke fear of invasion, fear of being overpowered, and fear of what will happen if the other side wins. They stoke fear until men believe they have no choice but to fight. At the same time, they appeal to honor, suggesting that refusing to fight would be cowardly and betrayal of their ancestors or comrades. The societal pressure becomes immense, and many men join wars out of fear of being labeled as traitors or cowards. In modern times, this manipulation has become more sophisticated through the use of propaganda. State-controlled media, political speeches, and even entertainment are used to shape the narrative around war. Leaders frame conflicts in terms of good versus evil, freedom versus oppression, and loyalty versus betrayal. One famous example is the war on terror. After the tragic event of 9/11, leaders framed the narrative in a way that made war seem inevitable and just. Yet over time it became clear that some of these wars were driven by interests like oil, geopolitical influence, and defense contracts. The leaders never told the whole story, they only told the part that would make good men feel obligated to fight. But while good men sacrifice their lives on the battlefield, who is really benefiting? Leaders who send others to war rarely put themselves in harm's way. Often they gain power, wealth, and prestige while the soldiers return home, if they return at all, broken, injured, or in coffins. We see this time and again. Defense contractors profit enormously from war, making billions of dollars while the soldiers on the ground earn meager salaries and face life-threatening situations daily. Politicians gain popularity during wartime, and the rich find ways to profit from the chaos, whether through resources, contracts, or territorial gain. War has become a business, a deadly business, where the price is paid in the life of good men. So how do we break free from this cycle of manipulation and brainwashing? The first step is awareness. We must recognize when leaders are using fear, nationalism, or honor to push us into conflicts that don't serve our best interests. Secondly, it's important to question authority. Don't blindly trust those in power. Question their motives and seek the truth behind their words. Are we being sent to war to justice and peace, or for someone's personal gain? Finally, education is key. The more we educate ourselves and others about the true causes of war, the harder it will be for leaders to manipulate the masses into needless conflict. In conclusion, the corruption of leadership and the manipulation of good men to die for them is one of history's most tragic and consistent patterns. But it doesn't have to be this way. By understanding how leaders use tactics like fear, nationalism, and propaganda, we can arm ourselves with the knowledge to resist this manipulation. Remember, true power comes from unity, from people standing together against those who would use war to further their own interest. Thank you for joining me today on this Truth Beyond the Curtains at Tony's podcast. Stay informed, stay critical, and most importantly, stay human. Until next time, take care.